Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this webinar this morning, talking to you about sustainable employee benefits, a little bit about Amba. Really, the most important thing about leveraging employee benefits to make a change to the climate crisis that we're in at the moment. Let me introduce myself. My name is Tobin Murphy-Coles. I'm the CEO here at Amba. This is a topic I'm incredibly passionate about for a number of reasons. One, because it's the right thing to do, but equally reflecting on some of the things that are going on around the world at the moment, a perfect storm almost, just in terms of a climate crisis, a cost of living crisis, and the great resignation happening all at the same time. If anybody's seen it, it reminds me of that scene in The Perfect Storm where the three storm cells merge over the top of each other to create the superstorm. It does feel a bit like that at the moment. I'm passionate about the things that we're going to talk about now can go some way to addressing, clearly not solving, but certainly addressing a number of those different issues that we're talking about. So I know the session is in today for 45 minutes. I don't think we'll take that long. I think it will be 30 minutes or so just to go through this. There is a question and answer function on your portal in front of you, so do feel free to ask any questions. At the end of the session, I'll do my best to see if there are any that I can answer there and then. If not, we'll certainly reach out afterwards and talk to you a little bit more about the question that you asked. So 30 minutes just to go through this. The intention here is this to be educational. It's not a sales pitch. I'll touch on Amba and a couple of propositions as we go through, but they're a vehicle, and it's important that we talk about them in that context. So yeah, let's get this underway. Just to start really just with a little introduction about who Amba are. I mean, essentially, we're an employee benefits consultancy and an employee benefits technology provider, but we are different in the sense that we believe in business as a force for good. And we believe there's a change going on out in UK PLC, well, in fact, global PLC, which is just starting to say something along the lines of the talent that we're hiring has different values and the world is in a different place. And perhaps the employee benefits and reward packages we've used in the past to attract and retain talent have changed. And Amba is reflecting that. We believe in three things very strongly, which other people call ESG, so environmental and social governance. We call planet, people, and process. It's the same thing, really, and it's the linking of all three things of those together. We're underpinned by B Corp. So we're a B Corp business. So everything that we do, the people that we work with, the suppliers that we use go through that rigorous process for them to become a partner of Amba. I'm going to talk to you today specifically about the sustainable bit, but for any business that we work with, there are other services that Amba provide, particularly around HR support, which can be critical to some of our clients, particularly some of our smaller clients. That's probably enough about us. The rest of what we do will become clearer as we go through this session. And I suppose perhaps the starting point, just to make sure that really we're all on the same page, is just understanding the climate crisis that sits in front of us, but also then just thinking about that in terms of the values of talent coming into the workplace at the moment. So let me start with the talent coming into the workplace. So we know now that over 50% of our workforce are in the generations that are named Millennial or Generation Z. And that brings a different value set into the workplace and a different way of thinking that perhaps is challenging us all at the moment. And those values are, I suppose one of the things that we should reflect on that's happened through the course of the pandemic is that where we work and where we live have become sort of materially blurred, actually. And alongside that, then, the values that we have as human beings at home have also come with us into the workplace. So it's very difficult now to draw a line between my values as a human being outside of work and those that I have inside work. They've become the same, and that's challenging businesses to try to respond to those things. Simultaneously, there is a climate crisis happening, and there are many businesses across the world, particularly in the UK, that are now making commitments to get to net zero. And that's not just in the large corporate market. So many of the largest corporates have made external declarations about their timelines to try and get there. But equally, smaller businesses are doing the same. And sometimes when we think about things like, a target date of getting to net zero by 2050, many would argue that's way too late. So my job here is really to give you some additional tools to bring to the conversation about how to get there sooner. For those businesses that are already on the journey and are using scope 1, 2, and 3, so you'll know that as the greenhouse gas protocols of getting to net zero, everything that I talk to you about now are tools to leverage into scope 3. And as such, for those of you on the call that are from the HR or from the reward community, I think some of the things here that we talk about today are things that if you have one, your sustainability manager would be really excited to hear, because in the main, when we consider changing the different processes in business that could help us reduce our carbon footprint, it is not often that employee benefits and things that we can do as an HR community is recognized as being material to that, but they absolutely are. So this is a challenge that's top to bottom in business. It doesn't discriminate on size of company. It's underpinned by the values of employees coming to the workplace. And it's something that I believe passionately that we will need to consider and start thinking about. The link to employee benefits, though, is not immediately obvious, but there are some very clear links here. So let me just draw out two of them. Let's start with pensions. So going back now, and time moves quickly, 8 years or so ago, we decided as a country to have mandatory auto-enrollment into pension schemes happening as businesses. You could argue it's not mandatory because there are opt-outs along the way, but the principle is there that unless an employee opts out or some other criteria that would disqualify them, all employees need to be enrolled into a company qualifying pension scheme. So on the face of it, that's fantastic because more people are starting to save adequately towards retirement. The challenge comes from that, though, is that based on some research done by Cushion, the ethical pension provider 2 years ago, each pension pot, so not each person, but each pension pot a person has on average commits 23 tons of CO2 into the atmosphere every year. Now that's just generated by the investments that pension manager is investing that money into. And I suppose for most of us as pension savers, beyond giving our money to our nominated pension provider, whether that's Aviva or Standard Life or whoever it might be, we don't often think about what happens to that money next. But it can be invested in all sorts of businesses unless we challenge it and ask it not to be. So it could be invested in oil exploration, it could be invested in chemical processing. The consequence of that is that pension schemes are leading to some of the most challenging climate issues by funding those types of projects. And it's not often we know that, but just do a little bit of maths for me in your own head. So think about the number of employees that you've got in your business. The average number of pension pots per person across the UK is 4. So if you just multiply the number of people that you've got by 4 pension pots each by 23 tons per year, the number that comes back is frightening, actually, just in terms of how much CO2 emissions pension funds are responsible for. And of course, when we think about it from an employee benefits perspective, It is within our gifts to be able to change pension providers and to work with one that is currently net zero or has an ESG fund. The same is true about transport. So many of us, all of us to a degree, might require our employees to commute either to the workplace or to meetings. We may still give them car allowances. We may have a fleet of cars. We may even have a grey fleet, so just sales execs out on the road day after day. But that's the type of transport that they're using, and how they fuel that transport is also material in all of those things. And again, car allowance, cars, access to cars, car leasing, company cars are all part of the employee benefits package that we can challenge. It doesn't just stop with these two. We can even start looking at gender bias within private medical insurance. There's all sorts of things that we can look at, but I just wanted to make the point of making it very clear why there is a link between damage to the environment, sustainability, and the employee benefits that we put in front of our employees as a recruitment and retention tool. And if you just sort of take that back to where I started previously, just in terms of talking about the generations coming into the workplace, over 90% of employees don't know the damage that their pension scheme is having on the environment. And over 90% of people, once they know that, want their company to move their pension scheme. So the link I'm making here is that obviously there's something we need to think about as the right thing to do as businesses. But at the same time, what we also need to be aware of is once the people that we're trying to hire and retain know about the damage this might be causing, they want it changed. And that could be the material difference between an employee staying or an employee leaving, or a new talent arriving at the business or choosing to go somewhere else. And that really is, to that effect, that's why Amba exists, to help businesses like yours navigate these decisions and get to an employee benefits package that you're proud of, that can tackle some of these issues head on, that can be used as part of your overall strategy to get to net zero, but importantly, making sure that the key people in your business stay, and those that you want to join actually do join. So that's a really important sort of inflection point now to start talking about, well, what is it that we do and how is it that we set about challenging that? And the first thing to say is that what I'm going to talk to you about next, even if we just adopted a very simple 6-step program that I see, that I've set out here, we're talking about saving over 30 tons of CO2 per person per year. I just want to draw a very crude equivalent to that. So if anybody on this session has taken the decision to become vegan and have done that not only, but maybe partly as a way of ensuring that food consumption is not something that continues to damage the environment, you will know it's a lifestyle change that affects every part of your life. So it's not something that you can do lightly. Making that change saves about 8 tons of CO2 per year, per person. What we're talking about here is doing something that can save well in excess of that quickly, without necessarily needing to make the same level of lifestyle change. Of course, for those people that do that as well, obviously the numbers higher. But I just wanted to make that comparison because I think that it's an important comparison to make. And you know, we'll all recognize around us, I'm not vegan myself, I know many that are, and the reason that they've done it is to live a more sustainable life. And it's a huge undertaking, but there are other things that we could also do which could have a bigger impact. And you know, in conjunction with that type of lifestyle change, it's really meaningful. So I'm going to just challenge here and changing 2 things. 3 things really, from the core of it. All of them can be done through employee benefits, and all of them can have a material output and saving into our CO2 emissions. So let me start from the top. In a moment, I'll touch on our technology, and these are how all of these things are accessed by employees. but there are 6 things that we can do reasonably quickly as employers. And in fact, realistically speaking, there's no reason why we couldn't make the changes tomorrow. That might be slightly ambitious, but the point that I'm making is we don't need to rip up the rule book or the current state of affairs to make these changes. So let me start at the top. So the first thing is to ask employees to start measuring their CO2. So within our technology, that's something that employees can do, and probably it's the first time that that a number of our colleagues may actually fully understand how their lifestyle, the way that they travel, what they do, the holidays they go on, might actually be impacting the environment. It's not designed to scare people, but what it is designed to do is to set a benchmark. And that benchmark is an important one to keep coming back to. So really what I'm saying is everybody for the first time will actually understand the contribution that they're making. What we will do is aggregate those up, we'll anonymize them for obvious reasons. And for you as a business, we can actually tell you what the current CO2 load is being generated by your current employee base. With that in mind, it's now about setting challenges to try and improve it. And of course, given everything that I've just said, and particularly around pensions, one of the first things that we will do is help businesses that we work with to think about the investment opportunities that their employees have access to. So it's not just pension. Pension is a huge part of it, but it then also moves into things like ISAs, particularly if they're stocks and shares ISAs, and beyond that, for those people that allow their employees to hold stock in other companies, that's something that also needs some thought. But the immediate impact of shifting a pension scheme from a standard default into an ESG led investment program is very material. But that's not only from a CO2 output. At the moment, ESG funds are very often tracking, if not outperforming, standard default pension vehicles. And I think that that's really important to bear in mind, because in all of these things that we change and we want to do, yes, we want to do it because it makes the world a better place to be, but we certainly don't want it to adversely affect the futures, particularly the financial futures of our employees. And what I'm saying here is it doesn't. The third thing is then to focus on transport by giving employees access to different types of propositions to help them improve that. So it could be as simple as accessing and leasing electric or hybrid vehicles. It can be right the way through, though, for those people that aren't ready, they don't have the charging infrastructure, they live remotely and they can't make those changes right now. It could be as simple as providing them with a fuel card to pay for their business travel or their commuting. And the value that's spent on fuel through that card is offset. So either way round, we're creating balance back to carbon output by either putting people into vehicles that don't create that sort of damage, or we offset the fuel burden from business travel that's being incurred by employees. So there's 2 bits are really key: focusing on investments and focusing on transport. But alongside that is energy consumption. Now, in the normal world, we would be talking to employees about accessing green energy tariffs through our software. And that's still there, but obviously with the energy market in the turmoil that it's in at the moment, that's not something we are perhaps marketing too much on until the world settles down again. But the top 2 really are. So let me just sort of recap on getting up to number 4. So we measure CO2 output. We focus in on the investments that people are investing into in the workplace. We focus on transport, making sure people have access to affordable electric or hybrid transport. And if they can't, we can offset their fuel. We would normally look at energy consumption and get people to switch on to green energy tariffs or EV tariffs. In the end, though, those 3 things won't take out all of the CO2 output that an employee would have measured when they've done the first measurement right at the start in point 1. And what we then need to do is allow employees to offset the balance of that through the technology as well. So linking point 1 and point 5 together, we measure. We help people make changes that are more sustainable. The balance that's left, we allow the employees to offset that difference, normally through reforestation, but through the technology as well. And perhaps the most important point of all of it is we reward the change. So all of those things link together to create something which is hugely compelling from an employee journey and from an employee experience, but is also doing something which is materially changing the CO2 profile of employees and business. That six-step program will save 30 tons directly, so that's without the offsetting, the direct savings of 30 tons of CO2 per person saved. And my experience in talking to businesses about this is the changes are relatively easy to make, and in the main, a company's sustainability manager wasn't aware of the type of impact that this can have. Not always, obviously, but very often. So that's the six-step program that we work companies through. The delivery vehicle for it, though, for all of that, and of course, always with introducing something like this, it's making sure it's available to our colleagues in a way that's engaging and consumable, packaged up in a way that people understand and know how they can access it. So I'm just going to attempt now to wrap all of that together and give you a picture of how these things then all to come together from an employee experience point of view. So the software portal is called Lumina, and there are 3 versions of it. So I'm going to play this side by side now in terms of making sure that this is seen in the context of a benefit program that you might already have in place, most of which you may not want to change. Some of it, now you've heard this, you may want to. This isn't a binary thing. This isn't about shutting down what you've already got or switching off technology that you already use or changing all of the benefits that you currently have in place. Actually, it's about merging the sustainable world together and the normal benefit package world together to create something which embodies both of them. And let me walk you through this. In its most simple form, Lumina can just be called what we call Lumina Perks, which is an ethical shopping site which employees can access 24 hours a day. This could be hosted on your intranet site. It could be within your current flexible benefits provider, just as a link. It could be standalone, but as a simple toe step into the world of providing ethical benefits to employees. It's just a very simple tool. A number of our clients actually host this alongside their standard employee shopping portal. So if you've already got a site where employees can do the usual things about getting discounted cinema tickets, that type of things, and Lumina Perks can quite easily live alongside that. And I think what it does for the first time is it allows employees to make a decision between, when I'm in the market to go and buy something, I can go the traditional route, but why don't I just see if there's an ethical alternative to it before I make that decision? And I think, my experience very much is that our colleagues, our employees will do that. They will look to see whether there is a more sustainable, more ethical alternative to it. Sometimes there isn't, often there is. But in the main, what it's actually trying to do is to get people to challenge the way that they consume material goods. So in Lumina Perks, you find anything from getting an electric home EV charger, right the way through to organic home sustainable food deliveries, through conscious fashion and through experiences and everything that's in between. So it's perhaps just a different lens on something that's traditionally been in the workplace for quite some time. Taking that a step forward, Lumina Gateway is the first point really where we're thinking about merging the existing benefits that you have with more ethical benefits. It's also thinking about other platforms and systems employees might need to log into on a daily basis. So the premise of Lumina Gateway is very simple. It allows our clients to host the existing benefits that they've got. And on the screen in front of you, you can see where it says Lumina Care. That might be your health screening and medical insurance benefits there. You can see Lumina Wellbeing, where your current wellbeing program might be. But importantly, what you can see at the bottom is Lumina Planet, where we can host the ethical alternatives to some of those benefits. So it could be the ethical pension scheme is there. It could be the ethical ISA is there, or whatever it might be that we choose to back, but it's presented together. And of course, Lumina Perks is always in it. So that's always there. That foundational point of ethical shopping is in that portal as well. So that's a really easy, engaging way to present that entire range of services back to employees. And of course, with the pandemic in mind and people remote working, that having something which is online and very attractive and easy to get to is incredibly important in any case. Taking that on to the next stage, which is Lumina Plus. Lumina Plus just brings all of the two previous things and then allows the flexible benefit option to come in as well. So that whole idea of allowing perhaps people to sell 2 days holiday to be able to invest more into an ethical pension or whatever it is that you decide to do. They're almost a stepping stone program to take a company right the way from introducing ethical benefits for the first time to then having full flexibility over them as they go. And that really sort of leads me to this slide, really, which is to say it is entirely possible to be able to have a flexible benefits program running around the ethical benefits that we put in, giving people the ability to not just select the normal benefits that they would through their flex program, but actually being able to select ethical benefits as well. Perhaps the one point I'd add in here, there are some significant tax advantages, particularly from a salary sacrifice point of view, when we start considering things, just focusing in on ethical transport, sustainable transport. Currently electric vehicles are still hugely tax advantageous to be able to select as an employee. I think many of us would argue, from a retail perspective, just off the high street, electric cars are actually quite expensive. But the tax advantages of running them through an employee benefit schemes makes them affordable for our colleagues. There's only 1% benefit in kind. They are able to be fully salary sacrificed from a leasing point of view. And the introduction of flex throughout this allows people to be able to create themselves the budget to be able to make these type of changes. And of course, if there was one thing I'd like you to take away from the session today, is just how easy it is to take the first step and just put the ethical marketplace in. It is something that could be implemented for you in hours, and is something that could be very powerful in your current arsenal of recruitment and retention tools. So let me just sort of bring all of this together, really, and bring it to a conclusion. For me, the stepping stones to take to get to this point are reasonably simple. We're not talking about tearing things up and starting again. We're talking about adding things over time to your existing employee benefits program and pulling them together into a piece of software which is highly engaging. I think it's the right thing to do as employers, but also, in a world where we're focused on the cost of living, the tax advantages are really helpful. In a world where the great resignation is happening, having tools which call out to the values of younger people coming into the workplace, I feel is an incredibly important thing to have. Follow this link. It's there just if you want to have a look at some of this stuff. I know we'll be in contact with you all afterwards, in any case, just to share some of this material around. But just go to lumina-uk.com if you want to be able to see this or get a demo of the platform. Let me finish though with where this is going next. So Amba is on a real journey with this to try and make this something that our clients can fully believe in and step behind. So the first part of the journey was to curate the ethical benefits together. The second part was to put them into a piece of technology. The third part was to then understand the type of CO2 savings that they would have if customers, clients, businesses that we work with started to adopt them. And then the final thing is about creating a movement, a movement of like-minded businesses which is doing something incredibly powerful to make the world a better place. So the next part of this journey is for all of our clients that work with us through the Lumina platforms and are implementing sustainable benefits into their staff. At the same time, they will be helping to reforest, repopulate, re-establish an area of mangrove forest in Haiti. It's something that Amba is incredibly proud of, in the sense that every client that we work with, every time we do something, you will all be helping to improve that area by re-establishing an area of mangrove that climate change has almost completely destroyed, and at the same time creating jobs for that local community and improving the local community there as a whole. So it's a full circle, really, in terms of what we're trying to do. It's about, yes, attracting and retaining. It's about doing the right things as businesses, but it's something also to be proud of, I think, as a collection, as a community together. So that's where it's going next. For every client that works for Amba, you will be helping to make this happen, and for everything that you do for your employees through this, you can then communicate to them the benefit that's also having in this area, pretty much on the other side of the world. I'm going to stop sharing at this point. You can probably tell from the way that I'm speaking, this is something that I and we as a business are very passionate about. And we think as a community, we can make a very substantive difference. So let me conclude by saying thank you for taking the time out on a Tuesday morning to join this. It's lovely to have your time here. Do get in contact with us if you would like more information, or head to the website. We'd be delighted to do a demo for you. I know that we'll probably reach out to you afterwards and just make sure that you got everything out of this session that you wanted. But yes, thank you. I'll sign off at this point. Thanks very much for your time, and look forward to seeing you all again very soon. Have a lovely day, everybody.